Hey there, today we're going to tackle a topic that's pretty central to a lot of conversations these days. We're talking about identity, respect, and the LGBTQ plus community. So let's just dive right in, shall we? So, LGBTQ plus, yeah, it can feel like a whole lot of letters. A bit of an alphabet soup, right? And hey, if you've ever felt a little lost trying to keep track of it all, you are definitely not alone. But don't you worry, we're going to break it all down, piece by piece, so it all makes perfect sense. Okay, so first things first, let's decode this acronym. We're going to go letter by letter and really build a solid foundation so we're all on the same page. First up, we've got L. L is for lesbian. Super straightforward. This is a woman who is primarily attracted to other women. All right, next is G for gay. Now, this one's interesting. You'll most often hear it used to describe a man who's attracted to other men. But it's also kind of a broader umbrella term that can be used for anyone who's attracted to people of their same sex. Then we have B for bisexual. This just means a person who is attracted to more than one gender. And it's not always at the same time or in the same way, but the key thing is that their attraction isn't limited to just one gender. Okay, now for T, transgender. This is a really important one to get right because it's different from the others. See, this is all about gender identity, not who you're attracted to. A transgender person is someone whose own internal sense of their gender, who they are, is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. And because of that, a transgender person can be straight, gay, bisexual, literally any sexual orientation. So Q is kind of a two-for-one. It can stand for queer, which is this big, inclusive umbrella term that a lot of people have reclaimed to describe anyone who isn't straight. But Q can also stand for questioning, which is for anyone who's still exploring and figuring out their own identity. And finally, what about that little plus sign at the end? Well, it's actually super important. It's there to represent everyone else, all the other identities that aren't spelled out in the main acronym, things like asexual or pansexual. It's basically a way of saying, hey, this community is diverse, it's always growing, and everyone is included. All right, so we've got the letters down. Now we need to talk about probably the most important distinction in this whole conversation, the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. Getting this right is a total game changer. Honestly, the easiest way to remember this is super simple. Sexual orientation, that's about who you love or who you're attracted to. Gender identity, that's about who you are. One is about your relationships with others, and the other is about your own personal internal sense of self. And to make this idea of gender identity even clearer, let's bring in another word, cisgender. It might sound technical, but it's not. It just describes someone whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth. It's a really helpful term to have, kind of the counterpart to transgender. Okay, and one last piece of the puzzle, gender expression. This is all about how we show our gender to the world, right? Our clothes, our haircut, our mannerisms. But here's the most important takeaway. You absolutely cannot guess someone's gender identity just by looking at their gender expression. How someone looks on the outside doesn't automatically tell you who they are on the inside. It's that simple. Okay, we've covered the basics. Now, let's switch gears a bit and do some rapid-fire myth-busting. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so let's clear some of it up right now. First up, the big one. I'm sure you've heard this myth before. Being LGBTQ+ is a choice. So, let's set the record straight. The fact is, it is not a choice. The overwhelming scientific and medical consensus is that your sexual orientation and your gender identity are just core parts of who you are. They're not something you pick. All right, myth number 2. This one has been around for way too long. The idea that being LGBTQ+ is some kind of mental illness. Yeah, no, this is just plain false. Every major medical and psychological organization out there, we're talking the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the whole lot of them, they all agree. Being LGBTQ+ is not a mental disorder. Period. Okay, let's bust one more myth, this one specifically about the trans community. It's this idea that all transgender people get surgery. The reality? It's so much more personal and different for everyone. Transitioning is a totally individual journey. Sure, for some people, that might include surgery. But for many, many others, it's about social changes, like using a different name or pronouns, or medical changes, like taking hormones. There is no one-size-fits-all path. So we've got the definitions, we've busted some myths. What's next? Well, how do we actually put all this understanding into practice? This next part is all about action. It's your toolkit for being a great ally. Here are 4 really simple but incredibly powerful things you can do. First, use the right pronouns. And if you're not sure what they are, it's totally okay to just ask politely. Second, try not to make assumptions about people based on how they look. Third, if you see or hear discrimination happening, speak up. And fourth, just keep learning. What we've talked about today is an awesome start, but there's always more to discover. So, at the end of the day, why does any of this matter? Why is it so important to understand all this? Because really, what it all boils down to is creating a better world for everyone. A world that's more inclusive, more respectful, more accepting. A world where every single person is seen and valued for exactly who they are. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. Now that you have this understanding, what's one simple thing you can do to help make the world a little more accepting? Thanks so much for tuning in.